Hello, everyone, and welcome to Ohio EPA's 2022 Virtual Compliance Assistance Conference. My name is Alyssa Corbeil, and I'm with the Southwest District Office's Office of Emergency Response here at Ohio EPA. I'm going to be moderating the two types of facilities, those who have had a spill and those who will session. Ohio EPA's 2022 Virtual Compliance Assistance Conference has 24 sessions over 2 weeks. This is today's second of 3 sessions focusing on the hazardous waste regulations. Registration information and a conference agenda are located on the Ohio EPA's conference webpage. We hope you are able to join us for additional conference sessions. So before we get started, I'd like to point your attention to one of today's environmental fun facts. Have you heard of Ohio EPA's Voluntary Action Program? VAP gives individuals a way to investigate possible environmental contamination, clean it up if necessary, reuse and redevelop potentially contaminated sites, and receive a promise from the state of Ohio that no more cleanup is needed. You can scan the QR code on this slide to learn more about this program and brownfield redevelopment. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to our presenter, Tony Carmichael. Tony is an on-scene coordinator, OSC, short, for the Office of Emergency Response in the Southwest District Office. Tony joined Ohio EPA in 2014 as an inspector in the Division of Materials and Waste Management. Tony transitioned to OSC in 2019. Prior to joining the agency, Tony worked as a registered environmental health specialist / registered sanitarian for the Greene County Public Health Department. He specialized in solid waste, private water, and on-site sewage treatment systems. Tony received her Bachelor of Science degree in Environmental Health in 2007 from Wright State University. The session's behind-the-scenes subject matter expert is Trevor Irwin from the Office of Emergency Response's Southeast District Office. So with that, let's turn it over to our presenter. Here's Tony.
All right. Afternoon, everyone. Yes, my name is Tony Carmichael, and I am out of the Southwest District Office. I am an on-scene coordinator, and you will hear me say OSC a lot or Office of Emergency Response. All right, let's take a quick poll. Now, with these polls, what we're going to have you do is answer the question in that questions section. So, has anyone here ever reported a spill to the Ohio EPA spill hotline? This doesn't have to be in reference to your facility. This could be in reference to somebody else's facility. And I'm going to give you a couple seconds to see if anybody has done that. All right, we're getting some answers here. Well, looks like we've got a little mixture. Yes and no's. All right, perfect. So, just to give you some fun facts, here is an estimation since January 1st of 2020 on responses our group has actually done and assisted in recovery of. Now, what I want you to take note of here is to see that we don't just do diesel fuel, okay? Yes, that might be what we consider bread and butter in our agency, but as you can see here, we do others. We do transformer oils, brine, liquid or dry food, detergents, and fertilizers. Ohio EPA's Office of Emergency Response operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. During the day, we actually have a duty room. After hours, we have a call center. When you dial that number, someone's going to answer that phone. Once they take your information, then they will actually assign it to the correct duty officer, the correct emergency response coordinator in that particular district and area. So, we are divided up into 4 districts. We have our Northwest, our Northeast, or Southwest, and what we kind of call our Southeast or Central Office location. So then we also have 3 managers, we have a chief, we have 3 duty officers, 3 night duty officers, and I won't bore you with our hierarchy. However, we are structurized and we do have our responding agencies and district offices. All right, some requirements and recommendations for spill reporting. Are you and your facility prepared for a spill? Do you know the sensitive areas around your facility? When we say sensitive areas, we also mean types of soils, creek, surface water drains. Are you near to neighborhoods? Do you know who and when to make that call? And do you have a contractor that you already work with? So, what is reportable? I'm not going to go through all these. We have extremely hazardous substances. We have a CERCLA hazardous substance list, the AKA list of lists. Anything that impacts a waterway or is threatening to impact a waterway. Anything that will cause a sheen to a waterway. Anything that's above a reportable quantity. So that's within those lists. 25 gallons of petroleum or more. And know your facility permit. Now, under the Ohio Revised Code 3750, at your facility itself, if you exceed the reportable quantity and it leaves the facility property line, that must be reported. But please remember, there are other instances. Is it also threatening a waterway? But we'll also get into why we do recommend in certain instances, please notify us, give us a call, let us know what's going on. There are other things that we could offer you an assistance to when you give us that call. So, how do you report a spill? So, we recommend in general having a list of your emergency contacts. It's easier just to call your local fire department, or do you need to call 911? You got to call the Ohio EPA 24-hour hotline. You got to call your local emergency planning committee. So you're required to notify within 30 minutes of knowledge of that spill. We are aware that that call takes time. As long as you started that notification process within the 30 minutes, you have met that requirement. But please just keep the documentation, write it down. So, once again, this is where I'm telling you, be familiar with your permit. Maybe you have a spill. Maybe it doesn't meet that reportable quantity. Maybe it didn't leave your facility. Didn't impact a waterway. Didn't threaten a waterway. However, your permit might have a requirement that you must notify either your district office or the Office of Emergency Response anytime an incident occurs. So make sure you know your permit. So what do you need to know when you report? Obviously, the more information, the better. However, the basics is also okay. You might not be the responsible party. You just know you are not the responsible party. If you know the responsible party, please give us that information. If you know the date and time the incident happened, the location, what was released. Is there any additional hazards around this release? What has been impacted? Is it concrete? Is it soils? Is it a surface water drain? Has there been any action taken? Who is on scene? If you're the one making the call, but you're not there, please give us the information to who is actually on scene that could give us the additional information that we are going to need. So that information initially goes into our hotline and duty officer, okay? So once that's come in, they're going to contact that OSC. We are then going to make that call to who is on scene. We're going to verify the information that we received. Depending on the material, we're going to request an SD sheet. We're going to request any photos documenting that incident. We're going to ask if you have a contractor. If you don't have a contractor that you normally work with, we can supply you with a list of contractors and their 24-hour numbers. We are subject matter experts. This is what we do every day. We are here to also provide you with technical assistance, which we could provide over the phone. So please remember that. Don't be scared to call us. Do not be scared to please call that spill hotline. We're here to also assist you. So that comes to why would you want to report a non-reportable spill at your facility? So I have a hypothetical for you, which is actually pretty close to an incident I've had. So let's say you have one of your semi-trailers on site. You had a saddle tank rupture. Let's say approximately 75 gallons discharged to the ground. Didn't leave your facility, did not impact a surface water drain. It's not threatening a waterway. You have contacted a contractor. They're going to come out and take care of it. Perfect. However, you're also near a neighborhood. A neighbor comes out that morning. They can smell fuel in the air. So they contact 911. They give them that information. They tell them, hey, I can smell some odor of fuel. And I also recently observed dead fish in the creek that runs behind my home. I believe the two are related. So 911 dispatches the fire department. Fire department deploys. They arrive on scene. They verify, yes, there is an odor of fuel in the air. Yes, they observed dead fish in this creek. The fire department then notifies EPA spill hotline. The EPA then notifies the local emergency management agency and Ohio Department of Natural Resources due to the fish kill. So now that we're all activated, we're all out at the scene, we're tracking, we determine the fish kill is natural. There is no sheen in the waterway. We can smell the fuel, and we can actually observe there's a contractor at this facility. Let's go take a look. Well, now you have 3 to 4 agencies, depending, knocking at your door, wanting an update on what happened just due to the complaints we received from the neighborhood. So it doesn't hurt to notify us. Let us know what happened. I then could have at least updated the locals that there was an issue and it was being taken care of. They would have then notified the fire department and 911 dispatch in case any calls had come in. So that brings us to, do you have a cleanup plan if you do have a spill? Whether it's diesel fuel, fats, oils, grease, cutting oil, do you know those numbers? This is where we talked about having a list of numbers. Do you have a contractor number? Do you have a contractor that you work with? If you do not have a contractor that you normally work with, it can take them 2.5 to 4 hours just to deploy to the scene. Surface water drains. Do you know where your surface water drains are? Do you know where they drain to? What is the groundwater impact potential at the facility? What kind of substrate do you have? Do you have clay soils? Do you have sand and gravel? And containment equipment. What kind of containment equipment do you have at your facility? Do you have any granular sorbent, booms, or plugs for your surface water drains to prevent any migration off-site of any fuels, oils, etc.? So these are things to think about. Do you have these materials ready to go for when a spill occurs? So here is an example of why report a non-reportable spill at your facility. This did not meet the reportable quantity, did not leave the facility. This is actually food fats. But they knew that they would get possible complaints from the citizens to the local fire department or the police department. We requested photos. We verified cleanup activities. We notified the local EMA, Emergency Management Agency, of the incident. We provided them with that information in case any complaints came in. This is where the facility knew their permit. The facility in question, their permit required notification to the spills hotline when any incident occurred. So no, this was not a violation of waters of the state, but this would have been a violation of their permit reporting requirements. Okay, so here is, we're going to do this in our questions. They're on the right side in the interface. This was reported to our office from a citizen of glycol impacting the waterway. What do you think this is? I will give you a hint. It is not glycol. So I'll give you a minute. Please let me know what you think this is. All right. These are great. Looks like all of you are getting this right. It is pond dye. Correct. Now, this came from a facility. So, is this a violation? Yes. Yes, this is a violation. Ohio Administrative Code 3745-104 is free from, which means you cannot discolor waters of the state. So one thing, if you're doing a tracing dye, because I did see that as an question or one of the answers, we normally have you notify that district office. That is a practice that is approved. Pond dye, to keep algae from going in a pond, is not acceptable to discharge from said pond. So this is where you don't want to do, well, if a little is good, a lot must be more. Please make sure that you are using the correct amount and you don't do this during a time when you know you're going to have a heavy rain event. Okay, so do you think this is reportable? This is yes or no, and there is a mistake here. This should say 3,000 gallons of ethylene glycol. It's located in a secondary containment area. There is no impact to a waterway, and the waterway is not threatened. No off-site migration. So with these, we're just putting them in the questions for yes or no. We don't have a poll set up for these particular questions. Sorry. All right. No, you do not have to report this. However, it's highly recommended that you do. All right, next one. There's an unknown reason why the pond turned red. Has not migrated off-site. Seems to be contained. We don't see any impact to the surrounding surface water, but their on-site monitoring well turned red. Is this reportable? All right, perfect. Yes, this is reportable. This is impact to groundwater. So no, it did not leave site, but it did impact groundwater, which is also considered water of the state. Okay. Is this reportable? This was a cutting oil. This is a retention pond, has an outlet that does discharge off property. Retention pond is online, and at this time it has not migrated off site. Is this reportable? All right. You guys are doing great. Yes, this is reportable. And the reason being it does have a discharge point that goes to waters of the state. It began as being contained on property, but it did make it to the local creek. All right. Next one. Is this reportable? Non-hazardous. Unknown amount of carbon was released into the waterway. Migrated off-site. Dead fish were observed in the area. Of course, right? Just because something is not considered hazardous doesn't mean it's not hazardous. In this instance, the carbon depleted so much oxygen from the water, that's what resulted in this fish kill. The responsible party in this case immediately reported it to Ohio EPA. They got an immediate response from us. They also had an immediate response from their contractor. And by doing this quick reporting, they were able to limit any additional impact. Because please remember, when people see dead fish, they're not sure what's happening. This also is in a source water protection area. So they had to be real quick on this. Public perception can be, very tricky nowadays. So the immediately you get somebody on this, the better. So we were able to not only assist them with mitigation, we were also able to help limit that impact, which also limited costs to the facility themselves. Okay. So this one's a little different. This is non-hazardous. As we can see from the photos, there is off-site migration. Impact to adjacent property. This is actually brine used as a de-icer, which is permissible to roadway application. So what's the big deal? This is reported to us as no waterways impacted or threatened. Is this reportable? So this one's a little tricky, huh? All right. So, believe it or not, it is reportable. So after reviewing our mapping system, we could see there were multiple surface water drains near that impacted site. So we actually used one of our tools which is just a simple soil conductivity meter. So at first it appeared we had very little impact, but what it did was it absorbed into that soil, which caused the salinity ratio to go sky high. Well, that's salt leading to the surface water drain, then to a creek, will then kill fish and other organisms within that creek. But something simple as a soil scrape would remove that impacted material. So this is kind of where we'll start getting into some of the tools that we have with us in our response vehicles. And remember, we will work with you. Spills happen. We don't just point and tell you what to do. I have hard boom, soft boom. I have all these tools along with knowledge. We assist with that guidance communication, whether it be with you as the responsible party, your contractor, and we're here to get that mitigation set up immediately to get this done. So this brings us to what is that benefit to reporting and getting our knowledge and our subject matter experts on the phone or out at the site. So this is basic, right? Here is pole-mounted transformer, non-PCB, 51 gallons are discharged to the roadway, soils, and waterway, okay? This was the contractor's response. Are you ready? Does this look a little over the top? Okay. Do you think there's a better way of doing this? We have so much experience. Once again, we do this all the time. This is our job. We're here to help clean up the quickest and most effective way possible. When we see something isn't working, a waste of time and money, we will inform you. We will let you know. We will also inform your contractor that there is a better way of doing this, okay? We will also give you any type of recommendation that we can. So please remember that. So that brings us to what tools we actually carry. So we have an assortment of test strips. Okay, we have the multi-ray, which actually takes some of those gaseous readings. We have a YSI meter that we use in the waterways. It will read temperature, pH, dissolved oxygen. We have an ammonia checker. These are some of the tools we use to determine some of those remediation actions. For one, is it working? If it's not working, then we might need to, switch tactics. But this is some of the stuff that we use that we carry all the time. Here's some of the containment tools. We have hard boom, soft boom, and the hard boom is that orange that you can see there. We use those for more of that creek, river boom, soft boom. We have it there on our other photo, something simple as plywood. So please remember, oils, things of that nature, petroleums, they stay on top of the water. So something as simple as this, or even creating an underflow dam, is going to help stop that discharge, or at least keep it at your facility, or stop the migration of that. So it limits the additional need for cleanup measures. So we keep these things. We have all this in our trucks ready to go. So if we're first on the scene, not your contractor, we're at least able to get some of this set up and get going. All right, now, let's take a quick poll. These are going to be in your questions. What do you do if a mercury spill happens at your facility? Do you begin cleanup operations? Do you report it to the local health department? Or do you call Ohio EPA's emergency spill hotline? So I'll give you a moment.
We're getting some responses in. And it looks like still at about 50, so we're going to go ahead and give it another minute or so until we get a few additional responses. All right. All right. So it looks like about 76% of you guys have responded. So we're going to go ahead and close the poll and share the results with everyone.
All right, perfect. Yes, please do not begin the cleanup operations. Please call the Ohio EPA's spill hotline first. We will also notify your local health department. All right, so one of the big things is then we can at least respond and get some of this cleaned up. Okay, so we don't want you to track it. Mercury kind of goes everywhere. And we have the tools and equipment to actually deal with mercury spills. Nope. Go back. Okay. Here's another question. Well, actually, we'll skip to that real quick. So this is what we use for mercury. So here on the left, this shows you what actually a student brought into the school. They dropped the mercury vial. It went. The teacher and 3 students cleaned it up before contacting Ohio EPA. Total of 6 students were contaminated. Their family needed to bring extra clothes before they could leave, and the whole room was also contaminated. On the right is actually what we use to determine where they're at with that spill cleanup. So that's why it's really hard with mercury. It goes into small little beads, and we do not recommend that you touch that at all. Okay, so here, emergency response poll. Oh, apparently we went right into that. Okay, let's take another poll. What is the safest type of battery used for an electric vehicle?
I've launched a poll, so you can go ahead and make your selection now, whether you think it's lithium ion or the lithium iron phosphate. We'll give it another minute or so until we get a few more responses coming in. All right. Looks like about 79 to 80% of you guys have voted. So I'm going to go ahead and close that poll and start to share the results with you guys.
All right. So lithium ion batteries have electrodes placed close together, which increases the chances of a short, and are filled with a flammable liquid electrolyte. If fire occurs, EVs with lithium-ion batteries burn hotter, which actually melt the roadways, faster and require copious amounts of water. The smoke is hazardous, hydrofluoric acid. The batteries can also reignite hours and days afterwards, putting tow trucks, scrap yards, and repair shops at risk. Tesla recently announced it is switching from lithium-ion battery cells to lithium iron phosphate batteries. So as an emergency response responder, this is something we're starting to see more and more due to the fires occurring with the electric vehicles. Sometimes, unfortunately, the fire departments have to stay on site until they are sure that that electric vehicle's fire is extinguished. All right, so we did run a little quick. I am going to see if there are any questions, comments, or concerns. And please remember, if we don't get to some of your questions, we will be able to get to them later, hopefully within an email form.
Thank you, Tony. Yeah, just like she said, we're now going to answer some questions submitted during today's presentation. As a reminder, you can still submit questions to the questions pane. We'll do our best to answer as many questions as possible. And if we don't answer your question during this Q&A portion, we're going to reach out to you via email following today's session. All right. We got our first question. Tony, what is the reportable quantity for petroleum-based discharges?
All right. That's perfect. So that would be 25 gallons. Once you hit that 25-gallon mark, as long as it's not at the facility, you are required by law to report that to the spills hotline and your local LEPC.
Thank you, Tony. Another one. Do you have to be the responsible party to report a spill?
No, you do not need to be the responsible party. If you're not sure what is occurring, you can still report that. We will follow up. We will actually make some of the notifications to our local response partners as well. They will go out, take a look and see what's going on. Sometimes we do receive complaints about something in the waterway, right? Especially within the industry area. Sometimes you guys are jam-packed in there, but you see something, but you know it's not your facility, please report that. And you can remain anonymous as well.
All right, thank you, Tony. Another one came in. If you are the responsible party, how long do you have to report the spill?
So that's where, once again, we tell you 30 minutes once you have knowledge of said incident or spill, okay? So within that 30 minutes, you need to start making those required phone calls. As long as you've started, then that suffices that, okay? So make sure you keep documentation of that, or if you have somebody, then elect them that actually makes those calls while you have another part of your environmental team that's calling either your contractor, because sometimes you can be on hold, or any other notifications that you need. So like I said, 30 minutes, once you're aware of that incident, that's when that clock starts ticking.
All right, we had a good question come in. They said, I'm assuming we have to reimburse Ohio EPA for the spill response. Is that going to be coverable?
However, if we do an on-site response, then yes, we do have the authority to impose any type of recoverance on our time that we've spent out there. But please don't let that hinder you from calling in a spill. You're still getting my subject matter experts in there. You're still getting our time and our equipment. Okay, so you're not getting, it's one fee. Okay, it's not like going to the hospital where I charge you for everything I've done. So please don't let that hinder you.
Oh, we got a good one in. When an offsite spill occurs and the NRC is contacted, does the NRC typically contact you, or does the facility need to contact you directly?
You still have to contact us directly. The NRC will send us an email, but that doesn't mean that email comes to us right away, and that does not meet your reporting requirements. You still have to call the EPA spills hotline and your local emergency planning commission. So you still have to call your LEPC and Ohio EPA. That's why I recommend having a chart with those three numbers listed, so that way you don't forget to notify all three.
We had a question come in regards to the excessive booms that were used. So what would you say the correct response would be to in regards to the example of the contractor's excessive boom deployment?
So there's different styles. Everybody's got a different way of doing things. If they would have found that leading edge, they could have put either a hard boom, soft boom there. Then they could have pushed that transformer oil down to that area to recover it. There was no reason to put out all those pads. So if you want to think about each sorbent pad holds 3 gallons of oil. And if we say, let's say, we'll just estimate hypothetically 20 gallons of oil impacted that waterway. How many pads did they put down? There was no need for that. There was no need for that. So that's one reason why we come in there, because the contractor is going to charge you for everything they do.
Thanks, Tony. There's another question. If there is a spill impacting a creek and it's under the reportable quantity, do they have to report it?
Yes, you still have to report that. Even if it causes a sheen, you still have to report that. Anything that impacts waters of the state must be reported.
Thank you. Let's see, waiting for a few more questions to come in. Oh, they said, expanding on the last question, other than the Ohio EPA spill hotline and the local LEPC, who else must you notify if a spill impacts waters of the state?
So you have to notify the NRC. So that's where you need to have those numbers written down. Once waters of the state is impacted, that is another phone call you have to make. They're set up the same as us. That's where, no, we do not notify them. They don't notify us. Just like the LEPC, sometimes they're notified, they don't notify us, or vice versa. So we try to all communicate together, but, sometimes it just doesn't happen. So please call all 3. When in doubt, it doesn't hurt to make that call. Too much information is better than no information.
I have a clarification question that came up. Where does it state that groundwater is a water of the state?
It's actually in definition. So I would have to lead you to that definition for waters of the state. And I apologize, I just don't have that right in front of me. But if you can send that your email information, I can give you that. Or send you the link to the definitions.
Yeah, absolutely. We can touch base with you on email with that to follow up. Let me see. When does a spill need to be reported to the Coast Guard?
Well, so Coast Guard will do anything that's considered navigable. I can't even say this. Navigable waters. They will also review the NRC reports. And a lot of times the Coast Guard then will just contact an OSC directly. They might call the spills hotline, but for the most part, like in my case, they'll contact me, let's say for that DP&L. If it's close enough to the state of Ohio River, they'll contact me and ask me if we deployed to the scene. What did we see? Do we have any photos? Things of that nature. So that is something that they'll do through their system. Anything more than that, I cannot specifically speak to their response types.
All right. When you say know your reporting requirements per your permit, what permit are you talking about?
So depending on your facility, let's say you have a hazardous waste permit or an NPDES permit, look at your permit. So when I say your permit, it depends on what type of facility are you. Are you a solid waste facility? Hazardous waste facility? And if you don't have a permit through Ohio EPA, you don't have a permit. But within your city, you might have some permit that talks about offsite discharges. something along those lines. It's going to specifically tell you what you need to do if an incident occurs at your facility. So sometimes those high traffic facilities will have some type of surface water permit. Those are the types of permits that I'm speaking to. And sometimes those things are written in, just like with a solid waste facility or an old closed landfill. We found that gas exceedance has been written into their permit. If they have a gas exceedance, that they must notify Ohio EPA spills hotline.
Awesome. Thank you, Tony. Let me see. There was another question on the clarification of what does impact mean?
So when we say impact, discharge, things of that, we're talking about, so you had a leak. So that leak impacted gravel. Was it your parking lot? Where did that, let's say diesel fuel, saddle tank released, it hit the ground. So it impacted your parking lot. Where did it travel to? Did it travel to the soils? So then it impacted soils. Did it travel to a surface water drain? Yes. Impacted the surface water drain. So when we say impacted, what did it affect? What's going to need attention? What's going to need that cleanup? That's what we're talking about when we say impacted.
All right. Are the reporting requirements discussed codified in an Ohio EPA regulation? For example, quantity spilled, who to contact and when? If so, is the code the Ohio admin code?
So we have actually if you go to Ohio EPA's website and you go under emergency response, we have a nice little, let's see if I can actually bring this back a little bit too. Or not. We have handouts that actually will take you to each of those links. So when we talk about lists of lists and CERCLA and Ohio Revised Code and Ohio Administrative Code, we have those handouts in each one of those sections with a link. I know sometimes it's hard to try to figure out. So, when it comes to reportable quantities and knowing, wow, yes, chlorine is this much, but, it's only 5%. The rest is water. You're not sure. We tell you, when in doubt, call it in. But we have that link available on Ohio EPA's website, which we can actually send to you as well. And we might have a handout available in this. I'm looking right now to see if I actually have it in this presentation. If not, I am more than willing to send you that.
Yeah, and again, I just want to say that if we don't answer your questions here in this Q&A pane, then we'll definitely follow up with you after the webinar via email. Tony, I had another one that came in. It says, if facilities aren't required to have SPCC plans or RCRA requirements, what should they do to prepare for a spill and develop prevention procedures?
Repeat that. Sorry.
No worries. If facilities aren't required to have SPCC plans or RCRA requirements, what should they do to prepare for a spill and develop prevention procedures?
So depends on what your facility has. This is where I recommend calling a contractor. It doesn't have to be a large contractor. It could be someone that's small and in your area. They will actually come out, see what do you have on site. Are we just talking about fatty byproducts? Okay, well, let's do something that's just for your facility. How much do you keep on site? What is worst case scenario? They'll work with you and help you set up a plan on what to do and give you, I shouldn't say give you, but provide you with the tools and everything you would need to respond immediately before they could arrive or before we could arrive to assist you with that spill cleanup. So there are contractors out there, and a lot of them will actually come out, do a small little run through, teach you what each things do. The worst thing we want to see is that you try to go out there on your own and use something like Dawn dish soap to clean up a fatty oil spill. Please do not use Dawn dish soap. That's only good for animals inside a building.
Thank you, Tony. Let's see. Getting some good questions on there. All right. So I had another clarification question come up. They're asking if there's 25 plus gallons of oil spilled within a secondary containment that is non-permeable and no risk to groundwater. They just want clarification that it does not need to be reported. Is that correct?
So sounds like if it's within a secondary containment area, it's on site at the facility. And in that case, no. However, let's say it's in a semi-trailer, you got that 25 gallons, something happened, and let's say a tote fell over and it made it into a concrete container area. That doesn't count. That's off-site. That's not at the facility. So as long as it hasn't left that facility, you're fine. But if it's impacting someone else's property or property of the state, no, you have to call that in.
Thank you, Tony. We're getting towards wrapping up, so we just have a few additional questions. There's somebody that said, several facilities I manage are located very rurally. What is the best way to determine a spill response contractor?
Oh, if you need that, we have those lists available anytime. I always recommend as well. So one of the things we do when we have our spill contractor list, we also kind of reach out, make sure that they have the proper equipment as well, and that they're able to respond to these spills. Because some areas, yes, are more rural. Is your contractor going to need to go out and rent this material, these units to come in to actually clean up the spill? So we do have a good list for people that are in these rural areas as well that are close. So even though that list might say they're out of Cincinnati, they actually have hubs in multiple points in, let's say, the Southwest District. So there's always somebody that's close and it's able to respond to that area. So we do have those things available, and we do have a list that we're more than willing to give out to anybody.
All right, that was the last question that we had time for today. So thank you, Tony, so much for your great presentation, and thank you, everyone, for attending this session. But before we completely end it, definitely want to point your attention to another one of today's environmental fun facts. Did you know that some businesses are subject to closure requirements if they shut down? The goal of that cessation of regulated operations program is to prevent threats to human health and the environment that are created when business owners and operators irresponsibly abandon businesses where chemicals were produced, used, stored, or handled. The CRO program applies to owners or operators of facilities required to file a chemical inventory report under the Emergency Planning and Community Right to Know Act. Some program requirements include submitting this required information to Ohio EPA, maintaining security, and posting signage at any facility location. You can scan the QR code on this slide to learn more about CRO programs and its requirements. Ohio EPA hosts a series of webinars throughout the year on a variety of environmental topics. This slide provides information on how to register for these upcoming webinars, where to find recordings of previous webinars, and how to sign up to receive notifications of upcoming webinars through our Ohio EPA Customer Support Center. And with that, we'll end this session of Ohio EPA's 2022 Virtual Compliance Assistance Conference. We hope you are able to join us for other conference sessions. So thank you again for joining us, and have a great day.